Alright, welcome to the part 1 of the course which is on deciding the niche. This video will help you decide your niche for YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you want to start your faceless page on. So I want to start first by defining the term. What does this term niche even mean? So here's the definition. In nature, it's all about survival of the fittest. Every species is in constant competition for food, territory, and survival. But the smartest ones, they don't fight endlessly. They escape competition by mastering a specific niche. You can see this diagram right here. This is what a niche is. You know, out of all the places you can live in, a niche is basically like a tree. These three birds have decided that they'll inhabit this specific niche, okay, which is the tree niche. And then these three birds are specifically inhabiting different parts of the tree, which are more like the sub niches. The tiger, the eagle, the shark, each dominates its own specific domain. They have specialized so deeply that there's almost no competition left. Now, think about this. As content creators, we are no different. We are all fighting for one scarce resource, which is attention. And the only way to survive in this ecosystem is the same: escape competition by knowing whose attention you want and why do you want that. Now, we are not here to build a personal brand or become some influencer. We are here to make money using our pages, which run without us. Okay. So when I talk about a niche, I'm not talking about passion. I'm talking about profit. Let me give you the factors which you should take into place before deciding which niche you need to go into. So here's the factor number one, which is the monetization potential. And within this factor, there are many sub factors. And the first one is audience size. How big is the pond you are fishing in? The more people are interested in the topic, the higher is your scaling potential. But remember this thing: if you go too broad, it would get too competitive. You want a massive audience with emotional pull, but still you want it to be narrow enough to target efficiently. Here's an example for you all. A business niche is too broad of a topic. If you do something like AI side hustles, it has a large audience and it's a perfect niche to go into. Now let's focus on the second sub niche, the second sub factor, which is basically audience region. Where is your audience actually from? All views aren't equal. CPM, which is money per view, changes directly by country. In countries like US, Canada, and the UK, you have higher monetization potential as compared to countries like India, Brazil, or Indonesia. Now, here's the third factor, which is audience income. Even within these countries, there are different income groups which you can target. If your viewers don't have disposable income, even the best offers won't convert. A 10K audience of rich man can outperform 1 million broke teenagers. Here are some examples for you all. The first one is investment banking. Now, investment bankers are high income audience, which means you can make a lot of money. And let's say you go into something like Indian memes. Now, the audience is low quality and it's also low income, because only unemployed people watch memes that often. The fourth factor is audience intention. Why are these people even watching you? Views mean nothing if they come from people who just want to scroll. Your best audience is the one which watches with a goal: to learn, to improve, to buy, to solve a problem. Here I have given a chart, okay? Let's say your audience comes to learn from you and to earn money. Now the monetization potential is high here. And let's say your audience just comes there to kill their time, like they're watching memes and random edits. So you will have a low CPM, you will have low depth, which means you will have a lower monetization potential. Here's a formula for you all. Monetization potential basically means that you need to multiply audience size by your region quality, then you need to multiply it by the income level, and finally you need to multiply it by the intention. So this is the formula for monetization potential. Now it's not the only factor which comes into play. So here's the factor number two, which is very important: demand versus supply. Once you know that a niche can make money, the second question is there still space to win in it? And here's where demand versus supply comes into place. Demand is how many people are interested in watching your content, and supply is how many people are really posting it. If the demand is high but the supply is low, it means there is opportunity. And if it's the opposite of this, it means the zone is basically dead. It's a fucking dead zone. Now, how do you measure demand? Demand is the attention volume inside your niche. You can measure it by looking at the views of the top pages which they are getting, the frequency content from which the niche goes viral, the engagement, comment, share, repost, that kind of stuff. Here's a quick check for all of you. Just search for your niche which you want to go into. Search on Reels, TikTok, or YouTube Shorts. And if you can see that multiple videos are going 10 million plus in the last 7 days, it basically indicates that there is a strong demand for that niche. But if you see that only the old videos are performing and the new videos are not performing, it basically means that there was a demand in the past, but there's no longer a demand now. Let me give you some example. AI tools right now, they have massive demand. Everyone wants to learn them and earn money from them. Motivation, there's still demand, but the supply is like quite high, but the niche is evergreen. Now let's talk about something like crypto edits or NFT. It's basically dead now. The trend is over. The second point in it is, how do you measure supply? Supply means how many creators are basically creating the content you want to create. Okay. So for example, motivation edits, they are extremely high supply. And something like AI storytelling, it was low supply in the past, but it's quite catching up now. Now, your goal is to find the imbalance basically. You need to find a niche which has high demand and low supply. If it has high demand and low supply, it's a blue ocean. You can win by doing what everyone else is doing. Now, if the demand is high but the supply is also high, it means it's a red ocean. You need to basically differentiate yourself from the competition, and that's how you win in like high demand, high supply niches. Now, the third and fourth scenarios where the demand is low, you shouldn't go there. Don't create what the audience doesn't want to watch. Now, let's discuss the third factor which comes into play, which is the longevity of the niche. How long will the niche last, okay? Longevity decides whether your effort compounds or resets every few months. If you choose a short form niche, you will always be restarting. But if you choose a long term niche, your content would snowball. Here are the factors which affect longevity. You have some evergreen niches, which are basically based on core human emotion. Health, wealth, and relationships. How closely your niche is related to these topics, the more evergreen it's going to be. You also have some temporary niches, like you had looks maxing edits in 2023. Here's a quick test for how temporary is the niche. You need to basically ask, would this content make sense in 2 years from now? If yes, then it basically means that it's a long-term niche. Now let's talk about the fourth factor, which is basically moats and faceless pages. Moats are basically competitive advantage which separates you from the competition. So moats and faceless pages, according to me, comes from mainly two methods. The first one is, how difficult is your content to create? So it's basically the execution mode. The harder it is to replicate your system, the stronger is your moat. If your niche requires deep research, consistent formatting, skilled editing, or unique data sourcing, copycats drop off fast. You know, something like Zagdi films, it's quite high, it's quite hard to recreate. It takes a lot of money to recreate, and therefore it's like low competition. And then you have something like quotes. Quotes are fairly easy to create. It costs no money to create quotes. So it's basically like not difficult to create quotes. Therefore, you don't have moat in that. The second way you get moat in faceless pages is from branding. Even faceless pages can have a soul. Your tone, music style, caption, voice, pacing, and all that stuff, it decides your brand. Branding is a complex topic, but to summarize it, branding is basically what people associate your stuff with. So here is an action step for all of you. You need to go on YouTube or Instagram and just start a new page. Just scroll and try to find the content you don't usually consume. And when you find an interesting niche, use the factors which I mentioned in this video to decide which one you need to go into. So yeah, that's how I decide my niche, and that's how my friends who are making A lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars with theme pages. This is how they decide their niche. So thank you everyone.